What's going on? That's Textbook Sports Squad. Football is back. As we all know, the famous saying, ball is life. Well, last week for college football, we got week 0. We got Notre Dame. They beat the brakes off of Navy. USC, they beat San Jose State. Caleb Williams, Zachariah Branch, they were the highlights of that show. So we got a taste of that. But now, officially starting Thursday, which is the 31st, and into Labor Day weekend, we've got week 1 of college football. We've got some of the best college football matchups. Sunday, we've got LSU, FSU. That's going to be the big one everyone's going to be watching for. Get your popcorn ready for that. Then, on Saturday, prime time, you can sit down on your couch. We got the Battle of the Carolinas. UNC and Drake May versus Spencer Rattler in South Carolina. But then to kick it off on Saturday, you've got the noon game. Prime time heads to TCU. TCU played in the national championship last year. How are they going to respond after losing Max Duggan? Is there going to be sort of a lull for them after getting the break speed off of them in the title game versus Georgia? All that included, we have a fantastic episode today for y'all. We'll be talking about if the Packers can complete the trifecta and go from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love, something no franchise in NFL history has done. We'll be talking about that. Going to be ranking the toughest divisions in football. I'm talking the AFC North, AFC East, all that and more. But first, go ahead, give me a follow on Twitter at textbook_sports. Go ahead, follow me there. Also, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share it out to others who like sports on my YouTube channel at ThatsTextbookSports and my Spotify account at ThatsTextbookSports as well. You're not going to want to miss it. If you like this episode and other episodes on my YouTube channel, as I've mentioned, go over there, subscribe, share it with your friends who love fantasy football and all things sports at ThatsTextbookSports. And of course, as y'all know, that's textbook. So in last week's episode, I talked about what would happen after, as Trey Lance was named 3rd on the depth chart. Sam Darnold was officially going to be the backup for San Fran. And I talked a little bit about just how that's going to pan out from there, what type of trade value that they were going to get back. And considering what they put in, which is 3 first-round picks and a 3rd, and what they got out of him, of course, 4th-round pick, you don't want that type of value. You want to get something more. Of course, you'd want Trey Lance to be the superstar quarterback you thought he was going to be. But the thing is, that still may very well be the case. But nonetheless, he was traded from San Fran to Dallas for a 4th-round pick. And I think it's pretty shocking for him to be traded to Dallas just because they do have Dak Prescott. And yes, Dak Prescott did lead the league in interceptions last year. So you have to take that into account. And what's also kind of puzzling is that Dak's 4-year, $160 million contract ends in 2025. So you've traded for Trey Lance if you're the Dallas Cowboys. You have Dak Prescott on the roster. This trade hints that, well, maybe Dak isn't the guy. Now, Dak could play out his contract after 2025, and if he still wants top money, if the price tag is really high, Dallas can default and say, you know what, we're heading over with Trey Lance. But what's shocking to me, and I guess what I have a difficult time wrapping my head around, is that if Dak were to repeat what he did last year, and this tells me the type of confidence that they have in him, and the fact that Jerry Jones kind of just went out on a whim and traded for Trey Lance, didn't really talk to anybody, especially Dak, who's going to be spending the most time with Trey. So he went out there and did that. And it just shows that where their confidence level is in Dak. And if Dak were to repeat what he did last year, which is lead the league in interceptions, be the reason why the team's not winning the game, there is a very strong possibility that Trey Lance maybe could be the team starter. And the truth on Trey Lance, I liked him out of college. You obviously knew there were some things he was going to have to work out. Really raw prospect. Didn't get to play in 2020 because the COVID year and all that, yada, yada, yada. But it's going to be Trey needs reps. That's all it boils down to. Trey is going to need reps. How many reps is he going to get if they believe, if Dak is still going to be taking a majority of the reps? Now, if you let Dak finish out his contract, that's 2 more years. Trey doesn't have that much experience. I mean, he only started a couple of games in his rookie year, notably the game against the Texans. He started last year against Chicago. It didn't look pretty, but you still saw some flashes, especially the throw he had on a crossing route to Ray McCloud. So you saw those potential and that potential in Trey, but he needed more reps. And then he got hurt in the Seahawks game, which is about the week 2, I think. Broken leg, really serious injury. So he just needs reps. And I'm wondering if Dallas is that place for him. They obviously have a really good offensive line, as they do every year. You have Tony Pollard, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. So they have playmakers on that team. They did lose Kellen Moore. There is a good structure out there for Trey Lance to succeed. In the end, it's just going to boil down to reps and what happens with Dak's play this year and the years after. So let me know what you think. Textbook Squad, those of you listening, my listeners, audience, is this a good trade for Dallas? I want you to rate it. Is this A+? Is this C? Let me know in the comments section. I appreciate my audience's participation and comments. Going from Trey Lance, who's one quarterback who needs more reps, needs more game time, needs more starts, to another quarterback, and that's the transition from Trey Lance to Jordan Love. Jordan Love out of Utah State, had a really good year, drafted in the 2020 class, first-round pick from the Green Bay Packers when you still had Aaron Rodgers. That was the talk of the draft then, and it's been the talk for years now until Rodgers has been traded to the Jets. Now Jordan Love, can he be that guy? And can the Packers pull something off that I've frankly never seen, and I don't think has ever been seen in NFL history, where if Jordan Love is who they thought they were when they drafted him, and he becomes a hit, he becomes that elite quarterback that they all envisioned when they drafted him, the trickle down or the years of going from Brett Favre, Hall of Fame quarterback, Super Bowl winner, to Aaron Rodgers, another Hall of Fame quarterback, Super Bowl winner. We obviously know their talents. And then to Jordan Love, can he repeat in those footsteps and create a trifecta for the Green Bay Packers? That'll be something. And as it pertains to Jordan Love, he started in the Kansas City Chiefs game, right? Aaron Rodgers, I think it was hurt or there was something going on. Aaron Rodgers didn't start. Jordan Love got the start. Didn't look too pretty. He went 19-34, 190 passing yards, a touchdown, a pick. And that was in his first start versus KC. He did have notable playing time against the Philadelphia Eagles, and what I believe was Week 13 last year. And he looked pretty solid, and he looked really comfortable in that game to me. Now, the Eagles were up by a pretty decent margin. The game was kind of decided. It was about 85% chance that the Eagles were going to take this game, as they did. So maybe they were kind of, slacking off a little bit, playing prevent defense. But Love in that game, when he did get to play, he went 6-9, 113, a touchdown, and he looked comfortable, as I mentioned. And during the preseason, he's looked really comfortable as well. He's getting his timing down. As soon as he's getting to that back foot and his drop back, he's letting the ball go. He's making quick decisions, being decisive, and looking at overall, because when you evaluate a quarterback, it all depends on what's around him. He has a solid offensive line. He does have some weapons that I don't think a whole lot of people know about or know how good can be. Romeo Doubs, he's shown a lot of flashes. Christian Watson broke out at the end of the year. He's tall. He's got exceptional breakaway speed. If he works on his ball skills, he can really develop into something. And you see that potential with him. They obviously have two really good backs in Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, drafted the tight end, Luke Musgrave. So he has some things working around him. It's going to be, of course, Matt LaFleur, the coach. He'll get Jordan Love in the right situations. It's just going to be about, can Jordan Love do those little small things? And he's looked comfortable, but now we get to see him on the field. We get to see his real first test as a starter and being officially named the guy in Green Bay. And from what I've looked at and what I've seen through preseason and his minimal start last year against Philadelphia, like I said, he looks comfortable going through his reads, doing all the things that you want to get taken care of in preseason before you head off to play against Chicago. So, as I mentioned, audience, let me know, are the Packers going to complete that trifecta? Are they going to go from Brett Favre to Rodgers to Love? And what's the goal for Jordan Love as it pertains to naming him the guy in Green Bay and as an elite quarterback? What does he have to do? Does he have to lead him to the playoffs? What type of stats does he have? Let me know in the comments section. And I also want to say, too, like, specifically in the division, you have Jordan Love. Who knows about him? We're still waiting to see. And also in the NFC North, we've had the most hyped quarterback in the offseason, most hyped team, Chicago Bears, and Justin Fields. So with both quarterbacks, you're expecting I don't want to say resurgence, but a big time year from both of them. Which one has that more better of a breakout year? Which one kind of shows themselves in the NFL world that they can be the guy in their respective teams? Looking at it, I've mentioned Jordan Love's team. And with Justin Fields, they acquired DJ Moore. DJ Moore is going to help him out tremendously. If you've listened to my podcast before, you know that I believe the duo of Justin Fields and DJ Moore is going to be one of the most elite duos in the league. It's going to be like AJ Hurts and AJ Brown, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. It'll be on that type of level, and it'll be one of the most valuable fantasy assets. But this is a Chicago Bears team that went 3-13, one of the worst teams, didn't have a whole lot of talent. He does have Darnell Mooney, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet. They also got Robert Tonyan. The offensive line it's kind of fluctuating. There's a lot of guys with injuries. Plus, they've got a rookie right tackle. We'll see how that pans out. So the offensive line is, I think, worse for Chicago than it is for Green Bay. But the skill players are a lot better in Chicago than Green Bay. So let me know, audience. That's Textbook Sports Squad. Who is going to have a better year between Justin Fields and Jordan Love? I'm dying to see what y'all think. So, Broncos' new head coach, Sean Payton, has been on the record saying that he believes Caleb Williams is the type of player where the league might possibly develop a tanking system or a lottery system like the NBA. And it's interesting because you look at the types of moves that the Arizona Cardinals have made, and it definitely looks like a team that's outright tanking. They want to tank for Caleb. They want to tank for Marvin as well, because they've also got the Houston Texans pick. I mean, they have traded away Isaiah Simmons, who's a first-round pick, phenomenal talent, phenomenal athlete, can be a safety linebacker hybrid for a 7th-round pick. So that was just practically nothing, practically a bag of chips that they gave away for Simmons. And then they've given away pieces on their offensive line. They cut Colt McCoy, which surprised me because in the starts that Colt McCoy had last year, he did pretty solid when Kyler was hurt. And so I guess my question is, do you think with the moves that they made, because they're just outright tanking, it's really it's unfair to those guys in the locker room, especially like the one that comes to my mind is Budda Baker and a lot of those other guys. They are in their prime, so to speak. They're in their best years, but the team isn't doing anything to help him out or anything that shows, hey, we want to win football games. And it's very popular among fans to say, oh, well, we'll just tank for this quarterback or this player, and then they're going to save our franchise. That may be the scenario. And when you get into the later games of the season, you're like, oh, well, I hope our team just loses. We don't have any playoff aspirations. We're done for. But a lot of those guys on the team, they don't know if they're going to be with the team next year or not. They don't know if they're going to be traded. There's a lot of other things factoring in. Maybe they're at the end of their contract, so they definitely want to win and put the best on tape. That way, when another team is looking out there to improve their team, they can say, okay, this guy isn't a guy that's just going to, when adversity comes and all this is going on within the organization, they still put their best foot forward. So we want this type of person on our team. And it's interesting just because, obviously, if the Cardinals, if they want to outright tank, they can go get Caleb Williams. They do have the Houston Texans pick, and they've loaded up on a bunch of picks. But I don't know if it's enough to go get Marvin Harrison Jr., just because I think that Texans pick isn't going to be within the top three. I think the Texans with DeMeco Ryans, he's going to have that defense squared away. You look at the young talent they have. Will Anderson, they just drafted. Derek Stingley, he's a great corner, very solid piece. Then you have Jalen Petrie. He's in a breakout year for his second year. And DeMeco Ryans, just some way, somehow, with how he was with the 49ers and the defense they had, he's just going to figure it out some way for that defense. It'll be mainly on the offense, but I think the Houston Texans are a team that probably wins around 4 to 5 games, so maybe that puts them at picks 5, 6, and 7. So I don't think 5, 6, and 7 is enough to net you Marvin Harrison Jr. But I don't know. Let me know. Textbook Squad should the NFL develop some kind of tanking system or lottery system? Type in Y for yes, N for no. Me personally, I don't think so, just because I think with the lottery system, there's a lot of potential and bias for it to possibly be rigged. And I kind of like the idea that if you're one of the worst teams, you get the first pick. You're not a team that's going to be one of the worst and somehow, some way gets an 8th pick or pick 8, pick 5. Especially for those teams who are trying to make their team better and not outright tank. But of course, as I said, let me know in the comment section what you think. I appreciate your participation. I'll admit it. I'll be willing to admit it. I was wrong when it comes to the Ohio State quarterback battle. On Tuesday, Ryan Day named Kyle McCord the starter, but he also did mention that Devin Brown will get some snaps in that game against Indiana. And that interests me because, well, maybe he's thinking this Indiana game is going to be like, oh, we'll go over there. By halftime, we'll be up by 20, 30 points, and then we can put Devin Brown in. How's he going to divvy that up? Is Devin going to get one possession, then Kyle gets another possession, and then they go back and forth like that? I don't like that. I think when it comes to your quarterback and battles like this, you have to name the starter right away, just so that way they get that game time to gel with the team. Obviously, Kyle McCord, he's been throwing to these guys for about 3 years. He's thrown to Marvin Harrison Jr. even longer. They were teammates in high school. But you still want the defense and the rest of the team to be able to get behind that guy and have them as their starter, as the leader of that locker room. And it's an interesting scenario for me because, well, maybe there's a possibility Ryan Day still isn't decided, but since Kyle's been there a little bit more, he's going to have Kyle start first. Maybe he's still thinking about Devin Brown. Looking at their schedule, whoever starts for the Notre Dame game for me is going to be the starter for the rest of the season. Because you look at the schedule, I mean, you have Indiana, and then Youngstown State, and then Western Kentucky, and then you have the Notre Dame game. So they have 3 kind of practice games where they can get it situated. I would typically think you want the starter to have those 3 practice games and not it be back and forth or go into September. But those are just my thoughts about it. Obviously, Ryan Day, when it comes to quarterbacks, you should have no worry about him. He's developed his fair share of quarterbacks to be first-round draft picks in the NFL. Dwayne Haskins, may he rest in peace. He's a first-round draft pick. Then Justin Fields, first-round draft pick. Then the year after that, C.J. Stroud, first-round draft pick. So when it comes to Ryan Day and the quarterbacks, Buckeye fans shouldn't worry, but it's interesting to see that he, even in week 1, as we get to September, he's still kind of, it seems like, undecided to who the starter should be. On this podcast episode, I'll be ranking the toughest divisions, in my opinion. First off, I'm going to start with the AFC North. I have it as Bengals 1, Browns 2, Ravens 3, and actually the Ravens and Steelers tied at 3, but I give the tiebreaker to the Ravens late in the season against Pittsburgh. And as for the record, Bengals I believe will be 12-5, Browns 11-6, Ravens 10-7, Steelers 10-7. This, if the Cleveland Browns do what I think and project them to be, which is Deshaun Watson gets back on track. He's got his best weapons in Amari Cooper, and then they've traded for Elijah Moore. If you've listened to this podcast before, y'all know how I feel about Elijah Moore. And he's got David Njoku. And I do expect Deshaun Watson to go back to playing the way he used to in Houston. If they do take that next step, because they have all the pieces around them, defensive line, linebackers, safeties, corners, you name it, Nick Chubb, running backs, offensive line. They have all those pieces there. It's just about putting it back together, regrouping, and so on. And then another team that I also think takes a step up this season is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know it's just preseason, but they look like a well-functioning machine, especially the offense in preseason. We know Mike Tomlin is always going to get that defense squared away. We know every year he's going to have a winning record at least. And then you consider that they've got Pickett and Pickens. That duo looks to be ascending. They've put new pieces on the offensive line, specifically Isaac Seumalo from the Philadelphia Eagles, who they got in free agency. So they fixed the offensive line somewhat. They have all these pieces. They have Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, Kenny Pickett. Looks to be on the right track in year 2. So I do think they take another step up. And the Baltimore Ravens, they've made all these great offensive additions and acquisitions, but defensively, it's going to be surprising for me because I've known through watching football the Ravens to always have a phenomenal defensive unit, and they still have some very good pieces in Roquan Smith, Patrick Queen. We'll see what happens with Jason Owe. Can he develop finally? And, we all know Marlon Humphrey. They have Kyle Hamilton, Marcus Williams at the safety spots. But the defense, I think, also takes a step back just because they don't have much as for corners outside of Marlon Humphrey. And we know he's dealing with some injuries right now. So I do think they take a small step down, but I still do have them finishing at 10-7, third in the division. AFC is a lot tougher, so we'll see if that's enough for them to get into the playoffs at least. But that's how I have your AFC North panning out. Bengals on top, 12-5. They'll take care of business as usual. And then going into the division that improved the most this offseason, that's the AFC East. You have the Miami Dolphins. They made their fair share of acquisitions to make sure that this team has all the pieces to be a Super Bowl winning team, a Super Bowl contending team as well. Same thing with the New York Jets. They put all the pieces to make sure that they are ready to go for a Super Bowl title chances. The way I have this finishing out is a tie between Miami and Buffalo for first place. Both will be at 13-4, I believe. But I think it'll come down to either the second to last game or the last game of the season where Miami and Buffalo are going against each other. I do have Miami winning that game. So I have them finishing first. And then Buffalo second. I still think Buffalo is the team to beat. But with Miami and all the acquisitions they have, I do think they take it over the hump. That's what I at least project. And then for the New York Jets, I think it's going to be a sort of a rough start in the beginning. because you look at when the Denver Broncos traded for Peyton Manning that first year, it was a rough start. They were 2-3, but then that Chargers game, everything kind of got into motion. They all gelled together, and then they went on a phenomenal regular season win streak. They finished 13-3. We know they lost the divisional round, but I do see a similar path for the New York Jets with trading for Aaron Rodgers. They have the offensive pieces. It's gonna take some time. They may start out 2-3, but as the season progresses, they'll get better. And then fourth, I have the New England Patriots finishing at 9-7. Bill Belichick always has his team ready to play. So while I do think this is one of the weakest New England teams in quite some time, he's always going to have that defense phenomenal. They'll stump a couple of quarterbacks. They're going to be a great unit. And Belichick just always has his team ready to play no matter what. So I have him finishing at 9-7, just missing the playoff push. So let me know, audience, listeners, Textbook Squad, what do you think of these rankings? Should I have Buffalo at 1, Miami at 2, or should I have the Ravens higher? Should I have Cleveland lower? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And then for my college football pick'ems, I'm going to be looking at the 3 games that I think are going to have the most viewers and the most attraction. Starting off Saturday, ABC, primetime, Battle of the Carolinas, Drake May, Mike Brown in North Carolina versus Shane Beamer, Spencer Rattler in South Carolina. Lots of hype been around South Carolina and Spencer Rattler. They believe he's going to be a high first-round draft pick at quarterback, or he's going to be someone to watch to break out. Looking at this game, I think South Carolina wins. It's going to be a high-scoring matchup as we all anticipate. And the reason is, I don't know what the weapons or playmakers look like for Drake May. He's lost Josh Downs, who was his number 1 target. So how's that going to work out? So I think South Carolina wins that game. Then looking at prime time, heading on over to TCU. I'm buying all the hype into Colorado. I'm buying all that stock. I believe in what Deion Sanders is coaching over there at Colorado. I have them knocking off TCU. And then, of course, the possible game of the year, Florida State versus LSU. You've got a lot of NFL caliber talent in that game with Jordan Travis. And then they've added Keon Coleman, who's going to be a very important addition for them, going to have a significant role. They have playmakers offensively. And then Jared Verse, who I believe is going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Phenomenal defensive edge. They're a very physical defense too. Mike, you got to give a lot of credit to Mike Norvell. He's rebuilding that program. And then for LSU, they obviously have Harold Perkins. I believe he's an NFL caliber player in the first round. Jaden Daniels, he's a very solid. He has NFL talent. Last year, it was Florida State that won. I think this year, LSU gets that revenge on Florida State. It was very close. Had that kick not been blocked and it went into overtime, who knows? LSU probably has the momentum and rides into that game. And I think they take it this year. So let me know, my audience, listeners, Textbook Sports Squad, what you think about these pick'ems. Who should I have picked differently? And what's going to be the one game out of these 3? I know we're all definitely going to watch all of them. But what's the one that you just cannot wait to watch? Alright, so before I wrap this podcast up, with college football really on the edge of starting, I'm going to give out my preseason awards. And starting off with Heisman, I like Caleb Williams, but I'm buying into Deion Sanders in Colorado. I think if they win anywhere from 8 to 10 games, now I know that's going to be really difficult. They're rebuilding that program. It takes a couple years to rebuild that program, or any program in general. But with Travis Hunter Jr. and his talent, the fact that he can play both sides, he's an elite wide receiver, does everything you would like for a receiver to do. He's also an elite cornerback, does everything you want an elite cornerback to do from technique standpoint. He has all of that nailed down. And the fact that we haven't seen too many two-way players like him, if he has these phenomenal stats on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball, and a lot of people expect him, especially in Colorado, to play both sides of the ball. He's never going to come off the field. If they win 10 games or 8 games, he has all these phenomenal record-breaking stats. I think you have to give him the Heisman, regardless of position. And then for the Biletnikoff, he should have won it last year. Marvin Harrison Jr. If Kyle McCord is the starter, or whoever is the starter, because we know Ryan Day, we can trust him with developing elite quarterbacks and quarterbacks that head to the first round. Marvin Harrison Jr. should have no problem with Kyle McCord or Devin Brown. And then on the defensive side of the things, with the guy who's going to be covering Marvin Harrison Jr. at the end of the year, the Thorpe Award, Will Johnson. Watching this kid and just what he did as a freshman and how he was so advanced in the technique stuff. He had it all the NFL type of technique nailed down as a freshman, locking up Quentin Johnson, locking up all these number one wide receivers. He had his fair share of wins against Marvin Harrison Jr. It's Will Johnson. I see this guy. He's listed at 6'2", phenomenal skills, phenomenal ball skills, all around great corner. I think he's someone, looking at his style of play, I think he's very similar to Patrick Surtain. He reminds me a lot of Patrick Surtain. And then, lastly, on the defensive side of the ball with the Butkus Award, it's none other than Jeremiah Trotter Jr. He's a phenomenal talent overall. I mean, there's nothing else that can be said about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. other than just watch the film, watch the football games, and you'll see why he should definitely win the Butkus Award.
Real quickly, before I end the show, how about that slate of football games on Thursday night? August 31st, you had Nebraska going into Minnesota. That was really the headliner for week 1, Thursday night. Fantastic football game. What you'd expect from a Big Ten football game, really low scoring. Finished out, it was 10-7 for quite some time. Then Minnesota gets that interception from Tyler Nubin. He had a fantastic game, only allowed 4 yards, had 2 picks, and allowed a 2.8 passer rating. He really had a phenomenal game, and he's looking like one of the best safeties in America. We'll see how that continues as the season progresses. But you can see in a lot of when you see a phenomenal football player, or how you can really differentiate, is what they're being asked to do. A lot of Minnesota's defense and what they were running, it was all man across the board, and he would be that lone safety over top. And that's a lot of responsibility and trust that your defensive coordinator and coaching staff has in you to be that lone safety over the top. And it helped him, especially on that final drive for Nebraska. He's reading Jeff Sims' eyes. That's what you'd like to see from a NFL caliber type of safety. Gets the pick. Now his team has that chance to drive. And then on the other side of the ball, phenomenal football player, phenomenal game. Daniel Jackson, 9 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Game-winning touchdown, especially on that post corner route that he had. Phenomenal technique. Attacked the DB's leverage, got him to think, okay, I'm going inside with the post. And as soon as he commits it with his hips, shoulders, head, as I've mentioned, he real quickly drops his hips, uses his momentum to go the other way toward the pylon, and then just makes a phenomenal catch with such great body control and toe drags swag, as they like to say. And then, not as much, but it was just for the football game with Utah and Florida, not as much headlines there. The only headline is that Utah beat the brakes off of Florida, 24-11. And watching that game, the score doesn't indicate. The score says it's a lot closer than what that game was. Utah, from the opening drive, their first play of the game, long touchdown pass, and then they really just took command there. And it was surprising to see Utah just devour Florida in the run game. And then, of course, they have Cam Rising's out, so they were relying on their 2 backups to win them the game, and you saw how they used them in the read option. They just took Florida apart. Can't wait for these upcoming games. We've got on Saturday, of course, Colorado, TCU, and then primetime on Saturday, the Battle of the Carolinas. Don't want to miss any of those.
That's all I have for this podcast. Thank y'all to all of my listeners for tuning in, the audience. I appreciate all of y'all who've liked the video, subscribed to my channel, I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate your participation in this podcast as well. If there's any topics you'd like me to cover or anything like that, please let me know on my Twitter page at textbook_sports. Let me know on my Spotify account, YouTube channel at ThatsTextbookSports. Give me a follow there. What topic should I cover? This is all a podcast for you guys, for my audience. As I said, I appreciate your participation. Have a fantastic and wonderful day. God bless. Take care. And until next time,